Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're having a great day. May not be the afternoon when you're watching this, but it's the afternoon for me here now. My name is Phil, aka JC Servant, and today I want to take a few minutes to talk about the differences of Sentinel versus Blaster. We have a lot of these conversations going on lately because of a video that I did. And I'm a pragmatic person. I like to take a look at the facts as far as I can dig into them and find them. So I wanted to just talk about this a bit today and go through these things one at a time and compare these two classes together, because oftentimes the argument is why you're playing a Sentinel when you can play a Blaster. The argument is that the Blaster can get up to the defenses of a Sentinel, or at least get up to really good defenses. But a Sentinel can never get up to the offense capabilities of a Blaster. And that both of those facts are objectively true. Of course, the devil's usually in the details. Before I get anywhere, though, what I wanted to do was step number one. Let's go through step by step the major power sets in something like Fire. Fire's really focused on for damage. And then we're going to talk about some of the other differences. I got little notes here on the side, but we'll talk about those differences because they are really, really important. But before you head to the comments, wait till the end of the video. Make sure you watched it all to make sure if you bring up a point that I missed, that I actually missed it, okay? But let's go through the powers first, and using Fire as the example. So in Flares here, you can see right here on the screen, we'll zoom in a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see. But you can kind of see here that Flares is, maybe it'd be better if I just use the zoom feature here in Google Doohickey. There we go. So you can see here that Flares has roughly about the same damage on both. So on your left, you got your Sentinel. On your right, you got your Blaster. You got 45 damage versus 48 if I drop the decimals. Everything else is really close. Recharge time is really close. Endurance cost is really close. So these are your first level powers. Fire Blast, same story. Very similar. It's a little bit stronger on your Sentinel. It has a bit of a damage over time effect added to it. But it does take a little bit more endurance as a trade-off. So not a big difference, though, at all. So very much in the same time zone. Then we get to Fireball. And this is where things get a little, wait, did I miss one? Fire Blast. We're getting right to Fireball right away. Okay. So this is where things get a little spicy. With Fireball, your first AoE, again, looking on paper, your damage is very similar. Your activation time's the same. Your recharge time is the same. Endurance is the same. The big difference here, of course, is their limitations and their range. So Fireball, 40-foot range on a Sentinel, and can hit 10 targets max. On a Blaster, it is 80-foot range and 16 targets match. Now, if you watch my video on the case for Sentinel, the way I play is I tend to play solo or with small groups. So it's not too often that we're running into 10 plus mobs and whatnot. So this difference between these two is more of a group difference, right? If you're doing big groups and stuff and you're trying to mow those things down. Of course, if you're in a big group, they probably don't notice the difference between a Sentinel and a because everything's just dying so quickly most of the time. But if you're playing something where every point of damage matters in a big group, then it's significantly better on the Blaster if you're constantly running into high numbers of groups and there's still at least 16 enemies alive by the time your Blaster gets to do his thing because other people rush in there and kill. But there you go. There's definitely an improvement in those situations for the Blaster. Moving on to Blaze, here you've got on your Sentinel, you got 113 versus a Blaster of 123 damage, and endurance is about the same. Everything's about the same, though the Sentinel gets it earlier at level 6. Now, one thing I'm not doing is I'm not telling you exactly what order these powers come in. This is a level 30 compared to a level 30, so... But they did a rearrange what order you get the powers in depending on which class you're playing. So keep that in mind if that's important to you. So now we come up to Fire Breath, another AoE. I'm not the biggest fan of this one. It's a 30-foot cone in front of you, which I think means 15 degrees on each side, not 30 degrees on each side. I don't know. It seems very narrow when I'm using it, but it's more like a line almost. Not my favorite power in the world to use. Also got a long blow, animation there. Activation time is almost 3 seconds long. Anyways, the average damage is about the same on both of these and everything else. And your big difference being, again, the number of maximum targets: 6 on a Sentinel, 10 on a Blaster. That's your only difference aside from what level you can pick this guy up. Your only significant difference. There's no range difference or anything else here because it's just a 40-foot cone right in front of you. Then we have the sniper attack. So Sentinels don't have sniper attacks, right? So we're almost comparing apples to oranges here, but Sentinels get Blazing Blast in as a stand-in for their sniper attack. So you're going to have 2 different damage values here, 100 versus 200. Interesting thing is Blazing Blast has 1.6 second activation time, whereas Blazing Bolt has a 3.6 second activation time. So when you break that down into damage per activation time second, it is nearly the same. So once the fight is started, the Blazing Bolt versus Blazing Blast is essentially the same from a DPS perspective, though there's a little bit of an endurance cost difference, as you can kind of see here. But if you're soloing Blazing, I will say Blazing Bolt as a sniper attack can be a lot of fun just to snipe people off from the distance. It is great. Now in Blazing Bolt, once you're in combat, Blazing Bolt does less damage, and it seems to activate faster to me. I wasn't able to find those exact details, but I'm going to guess it's in the same ballpark as Blazing Blast at that point. Could be wrong, but that's my impression. We have Rain of Fire, another big old targeted AoE type of deal. This is damage over time. This is one that just rains fire down on enemies, and it's a good way to break them up because some of them start running. There's a bit of a fear effect on this, I swear, but they start scattering a bit. Anyways, regardless, same activation time, same endurance cost, same damage on both of these. You get it on level 22 on your Sentinel and level 6 on your Blaster, but you don't, it looks like a lot more accuracy on the Sentinel there, 2 times accuracy. There's no enhancements on any of these, so that's interesting. I didn't notice that before. I don't know how important that is. The power, the range of where you can put the AoE is a little bit less, of course, on the Sentinel, and that's a theme across the board. But one thing I noticed here in the notes section anyways, these are screenshots off the test server, is that there is no AoE cap on this, if that matters. I don't see one on here. Last but most certainly not least, we have the tier 9 mega power, right? Inferno, a point blank AoE. And this is showing only 154 on the Sentinel and 298 on the Blaster, right? So this is the one big huge difference there. Is this power, I should say. The one big power difference is between these two, really, I think is right here in this. Plus, furthermore, you have that 10 versus 16 cap into play, as you can see down here. However, the other big difference between these two is, number one, your endurance cost, right? It's a lot less on the Sentinel, so you're doing less damage, but less endurance cost, and you have a much smaller recharge timer, 90 seconds versus 145 seconds, right? Before enhancements. Obviously, enhancements can help close that gap. We're going to look at a little bit of math here, but if you were to break this down as how much damage you're doing per second of recharge, these are a lot closer. It's a 1.9 to 2.3. If you're soloing and you're going through things kind of quickly, the fact that this pops more, again, assuming you're not fighting groups of 16 people, you're fighting groups of 5, 8, 4, when you're soloing or doing small groups, your Sentinel is going to be on the average, or I should say this particular power with no other enhancements or considerations is going to be doing pretty similar to the Blaster, though the Blaster still comes out a good 20% ahead, assuming that there's a good pop to it every chance that it pops, there's a chance to use it. So there you go. They're at least comparable, and they're in the same ballpark. So here we have like just this little table that I made up here. The Sentinel versus the Blaster here. And you can see that when you compare the power side by side, the percentages are very, very close, with the Inferno being a 23% increase, essentially, that the Blaster has over the Sentinel. When you're looking at it from a point of damage per second of recharge type of thing, like how often can I throw it off? I mean, if the Sentinel can use their tier 9 twice as often, it does half as much damage, that's evens in my book. So when you consider it from that perspective, the tier 9 is still more powerful for the Blaster, but it's only 20% more. But you can kind of compare these other powers and look at those side by side. Blazing Bolt per second cast is if you're using it in combat and you're rotating it out, they're very comparable, right? So you can kind of take a look and let me know what you thought in the comments below. Now, I promised you that we would, so the summary here, just looking at this, looks like they're very, very much in the same ballpark. Very, very much so. Again, with the caveat, like obviously if you're in large groups and you're fighting big, huge things, you're definitely going to get better damage out of the blaster. Theoretically, you would have more longevity with the Sentinel if they both spent like, let's say 200 and 300 million on gear. Obviously, if you can spend 2 billion on gear, the blaster is going to pretty much cap everything out with that kind of gear, probably. I'm guessing that's what I heard. I don't have that much money, so I don't know. And the Sentinel will be capped out, and yet the blaster will still be doing more damage. But on that whole journey up through the levels, generally speaking, your Sentinel will have a lot more resistances. Mez resistances are much better on a Sentinel, things like that. And your blaster's going to have better damage in group settings, if you're just looking at this. But we have some other considerations, so let's talk about those. Number one is range. You do get better range on almost all these powers with the blaster. If that's important to you, keep that in mind. It's not really important to me because I don't need to be way back here. What's also kind of interesting is I hear that brought up a lot, and yet most people are playing their blasters as blappers, so I'm not really sure why it's a big deal to them. But I have found the Sentinel's range to be sufficient enough, and not to mention once you get enhancements on there, there's more range anyways, but I don't really consider range on those powers to be a big, huge deal. So, but there is that. You may have more value on that, so put that as a point in the blaster column if you do. The other thing, let me look at my notes again at the very, very top. Okay. There was two other things. Probably the biggest thing is, let's talk about their secondary power sets. So you have obviously different power sets between the two. So for your blasters, you have like mostly supporty type of powers and light control powers, whereas your Sentinel usually has armor. Within those secondaries, there are ways to improve your offense. Your Sentinel could go for bio armor, which has an offensive setting, which adds, I believe, some toxin damage to just about all of your powers or your attacks. Whereas, as I was discovering today with my beam devices blaster and doing some testing, that the little targeting drone gives you a flat 20% damage boost every time it's on. It drains some endurance, but that's pretty darn good across the board. It's a nice little 20% buff. I don't think I can get devices on my Sentinel. So I didn't want to get too far into the secondaries discussion, though. I mean, I definitely got some feedback of like, well, blaster secondaries, that's ignoring their powerful melee attacks, and and you start getting all these different moving pieces. So I didn't want to get too deep into that, but know that there are some differences there that can help you make that decision. And there's definitely some options on both sides for improving your offense and your defense in your secondaries, which can level out some of those scales for you. It's just all in how you want to approach your class. But the biggest point of difference is their class special ability. So Sentinels have vulnerability. It allows them to point to a single enemy and say, you're vulnerable. And it reduces all that enemy's resistances by 15% across the board. So if you're using fire powers and have fire resistance, it's going to come down a notch. That doesn't increase the Sentinel's DPS by all that much. I don't know exactly what the math is. I would assume base case scenario, it's a 15% increase on that one enemy and not even a group of enemies. You can only have it on one person at a time. But against bosses, if you're working with a group in particular, it's going to multiply everyone's damage to that boss. So that's pretty cool. On the blaster side, you have Defiance. Defiance allows you to use your tier 1 and 2 tier powers even while you're mezzed for the most part. That's a nice little thing. It comes in handy once in a while. Sentinel hardly ever gets mezzed from playing a Sentinel, but if you're going to play a blaster and you're going to get mezzed once in a while, it's nice to know you can still put out some damage. But the bigger thing is Defiance. Defiance adds some damage every time you use one of their damaging powers. Depending on the power that's used, it adds a certain percentage damage buff to your character, and that lasts for 7.5 seconds, and this does kind of stack. So if you do a 1 second power and a 2 second power, and it starts adding up these percentages. I was under the impression it was about a 10% buff on the average. I was wrong. I went on to test character, and I did some sciencing, and I found out where I could turn on the damage buff monitor. And I forgot that was a thing you could turn on. And I was able to maintain 20 to 30% because each buff lasts for 7.5 seconds. So one tends to fall off as you're, getting more, whatever have you. I would occasionally see spikes into 40, maybe even 50%, but there was definitely times where, heaven forbid, I got mezzed or I was doing a longer attack or I needed to heal and whatever, then that would drop back down to a lower figure. I'm comfortable in saying you could probably maintain a 20 to 25% damage buff. And interestingly enough, I was working with my target drone for a 40-45% damage output total without even taking any enrages or any other things into consideration. So that was a very, very nice additional buff to the character's powers. Now, keep in mind that this is all additive, right? So if a power does, let's say, 100 points of damage and you've already got enhancement bonuses that give you an extra 60% damage to your attack, so they bring you up to 160. An extra, so the Sentinel and the Blaster should both be at roughly 160. When you add the Sentinel's the Blaster's Defiance, and that adds another 20% if you can keep that up, it's 20% off the 100, not 20% off the 160, right? So it's not like the Blaster is doing 20% more damage overall than a Sentinel if they're both geared and there's other buffs going on or whatever have you. In practice, this probably works out to about a 10%, extra buff in the grand scheme of things. You can correct me if I'm wrong down below, but I've tested this on a couple of characters, and that's been the kind of numbers I've been kind of drumming up, through that process and testing some of that stuff out. 10-15% tops. It's more noticeable at the lower levels, I'll be honest. As you get up there and you're getting more enhancement bonuses and set bonuses to your damage, which does have a cap of like 100%, I believe, then you're going to start seeing some diminishing returns compared to when you had like no enhancement bonuses hardly, but you should have some. By the time you're at level 20 or so, you probably got 2 damages in every main attack power. So you've already got 60 or 70% there. And so you're adding another 20% on top of it. You're not multiplying that 20% times the 60 times the. So kind of keep that all in mind. With that being said, so overall, you are going to, on the experience, you are going to see overall better damage on the Sentinel. Getting these mixed up, on the Blaster. You will see more damage. Of course, on your Sentinel, I will say they are a lot more survivable for boss fights and things like that. I've definitely had good experiences with both. I honestly truly enjoy playing them both, and I hope you do too. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I've done a couple of videos now on the Sentinel, but I don't know if I've ever shown off. I'm gonna show. I will try to do a video if you guys want to see it on my favorite Sentinel build, and I'll do a separate video on my favorite Blaster build. And again, these are both from a solo player perspective. Let me know if that's something that interests you or any other subject you might want to see down in the comments below. I've gotten so many comments, so much positive feedback from the community. I can't thank you guys enough. I'll continue to do these videos as long as you guys want me to do them, and you definitely demonstrate that when you message me on Discord or on YouTube or any of the ways to get a hold of me, Reddit, and you let me know that you like these. I'm happy to continue to do these videos, but that's all I have for now. Let me know what you think about this comparison. Let me know what you think about anything. And hopefully I'll catch you next time, and enjoy your adventures in City of Heroes, and God bless you.